Well, if I had $1 for every time I heard, "I will wait for the inevitable re-release," I would have a lot more pre-orders. Well, what's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about a rather important issue, and that is the issue of reissues. If you've ever been on any buy-sell trade, if you've been on any type of 6-scale collecting type of message board or anything along that, you have certainly seen this phrase, "I will wait for the inevitable reissue." But I'm going to dive into that question, or that statement rather, today about, is there actually reissues that we should be getting excited about or putting all our hopes in? But before we get into that, I do want to say thank you for everyone that has subscribed to the channel. Thank you for that. If you've not done so, go ahead and hit me with a subscribe, turn on your notifications so that you know when a new video does drop. And for this video, go ahead and hit me with a presumptive like. I would certainly appreciate it. But let's get into what it is that we're talking about, that issue of reissues. So think about this. Say you're going through and you see a figure that you've really wanted. You say, "Ooh, that's one I've been really wanting to run down." But it may be a little bit more expensive than it was originally at retail. That's kind of the nature of this business and in this collecting game, is that these figures do appreciate in value to a degree. With that being said, I have seen countless people say, "I'm not going to pull the trigger on this one. I will wait for the reissue. I know a reissue is coming out," but I want to examine that and talk about the idea of reissues when it comes to Hot Toys specifically. And I want to say that this is an important thing to think about, because if there's figures that you are considering passing on in the hope that a reissue is coming out, by the end of this video, you may not be so quick to pass on that. I want to talk about the idea of the MMS, that being the Movie Masterpiece series. I want to talk about the quarter scale series, the TVS, that being the television series, and a few other different versions of the figures that Hot Toys does put out. Now, as of this moment, there are 629 different Hot Toys releases that they have listed under the Movie Masterpiece series. Now, feel free to go and check my math at any time on this. There's a really good resource out there called HotToysPH.com. It's a complete checklist of all the different Hot Toys that have ever been released. That means MMS, TVS, QS, all of them are officially there. And it's a cool trip down memory lane as well, going to be able to go back there and see what some of the original figures were, what some of the original box art looked like, what some of the different promo images looked like. It's kind of cool. But officially, there are 629 official releases that Hot Toys has either said they're coming out with or have officially released. Now, we'll get back to MMS in just a few minutes. That's kind of the flagship line for Hot Toys collecting. But I do want to talk a little bit about the TVS, that being the television series, and the quarter scale. So we break down a few of these numbers as well. When it comes to quarter scales, and as you can see, I do have a couple of quarter scale figures behind me, there are only 20 quarter scale figures that have ever been released or will be released. Coming down to the TVS, that being the television series where a majority of the Mandalorian and Clone Wars figures originate from, there are only 68 figures officially released or revealed under that line. You may be asking, what's the big deal about all these numbers and why do you care? Well, that is because we're establishing a baseline to understand exactly how many figures are out there, because that's going to be the number that we chip into to see what the likelihood of re-releases actually are. Now, I want to start with quarter scale, and as I said, there's 20 of those figures that have either been released or will be released, and 7 of those, believe it or not, are Iron Man figures. And of those 20 figures that have been released or will be released, only one of them, that being the Dark Knight, has officially been re-released. Now, when we're talking about re-releases, there's two categories that I want to put those into. Either a straight re-release or a re-release where it actually improves upon some version of the previous figure. Now, that's the way this is with the Dark Knight Rises. You get an improved sculpt and you get a better base, but that is the only re-release of the quarter scale line. And that puts your odds of successfully getting a re-release of the quarter scale at a whopping 5%. Only 5% chance that any of the quarter scale figures will be re-released. As I said, 7 of them are Iron Men. But I'm sure that's just the anomaly, right? There's got to be a much bigger chance of being able to get those from the MMS series, right? Well, let's take a look at that. I think you might be surprised on what those official numbers are. Now, as I said, there are 629 MMS series figures as of right now, but there are a few caveats that I'm going to put into play here to make sure that we get this number about as accurate as we can say. First thing of all, I'm not going to be doing Stormtroopers because there's been multiple different versions of Stormtroopers, whether that is a Rogue One version, whether it's a New Hope version, whether it's a Return of the Jedi. There's lots of Stormtroopers out there. And if you want a Stormtrooper and you said, hopefully they'll release another Stormtrooper, they will probably release another Stormtrooper under a Mandalorian line or under a different type of title. I'm also not counting alternate versions of the figures, such as the chrome-plated Batman. That's because these were both released right around the same different time, I think maybe a month or two. You can check the different dates on there, but that is the exact same figure. One is just a little bit different with some nice chrome plating, and then there is the original release. That does not count as a re-release either. And lastly, I won't be counting 2-packs, such as the Han and Chewie 2-pack. Most likely, if one is released as a 2-pack, they are released individual, except for one of the actual re-releases, which we will talk about, that being Nightmare Batman. It was not released. It was put into a 2-pack, put into the television, the TVS line, and another figure added to that. So I'm not counting 2-packs as an official re-release. We will talk about those in just a quick second. So of everything that we're going to get at today, these are all official releases that have been released and have been reissued or upgraded and a different version has been put out. They have specific, if you look at your boxes, it'll say MMS 001 or MMS 138, whatever it may be. That is a specific serial number tied to that figure. So of those, in order for it to be a reissue, it has to keep the same MMS number. Now, you also have to keep in mind that a reissue does not count if they extend the run. I think about Infinity War Thor, when people were getting that, it eventually went low stock, it went sold out, and they pushed out more of those. That is not a reissue either. An official reissue is one that has been listed, has gone out of stock, time has passed, and then it comes out again with either an upgrade or strictly labeled as a reissue, such as the Mark V. But we'll talk about that in a second. So, the moment of truth. Of these 629 figures, what percentage have been officially reissued? It is a whopping 3%. 3% of all the MMS figures have ever been reissued or upgraded. Now, I will say there are plastic versions of Iron Man that did get a die-cast reissue, and I'm going to include those as reissues and count that towards your total. If you are willing to count the die-cast reissues, you're sitting at 5%, just like the quarter scale series. Isn't that interesting? So for everyone out there that says, oh, I will just wait for the inevitable reissue, you might want to do a double take to see if that's actually something that Hot Toys is going to do. Also, of those 629, did you know that some of them have actually been upgraded to a DX line? Yes, within those MMS series, there are DX figures, and some of those are some of the best figures that are on the market. You think about the DX07, that being the Bespin Luke Skywalker. You think about the DX16 and 17, that being the Phantom Menace Darth Maul. Usually a DX release is accompanied with additional accessories, possibly additional head sculpt, maybe even an additional body. Whatever it may be, the DX line did steal a couple of the reissues from our list because way back when The Dark Knight first came out and Batman was a hit, they had real low quality versions of some of their Dark Knight characters, that being Batman, that being the Heath Ledger Joker. Bump them up to an official re-release in the DX line, and only 4% of DX figures have ever been re-released. And did you know, once again, it is Batman. It is the re-release of the DX19 and the DX12, I believe, and that is from The Dark Knight Rises. Once again, it is Batman that is getting the reissue. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about, oh, I will just wait for the re-release, because as of right now, the numbers are not really stacking in our favor. Now, I'm going to run down a few of the highlights from the MMS line because that's the bigger line, and I want you to take a look at which figures have officially been re-released or reissued. And as I said, you will find a majority of them are Batman figures, which is very interesting. I know so many people have been watching a lot of the Star Wars shows, and they're saying, oh, I'll just wait for the reissue or the re-release of fill in the blank of whatever that is. Did you know that only 3 Star Wars figures have ever been reissued or re-released? 3! So, of all the figures that are out there, I'm afraid we might be putting a little too much stock in the idea of a re-release. But as I said, let's take a look at some of these that have been re-released. Now, let's take a look at a few of the highlights of some of these re-releases most recently that have come out that have really stoked the flames of everyone saying, oh, I'll just wait for the re-release. The first one and most recent is the Catwoman, the MMS 627 from The Dark Knight Rises. Now, with this one, they say we're getting an updated painted head sculpt. Hopefully, the different types of garments that she's wearing, whether that be pleather or leather, hopefully that's upgraded because the old version, way back when on MMS 188, I believe, that had a lot of deterioration with the leather flaking and different things like that, so hopefully they've improved on that. You also get a really cool new diorama display base. This is not just a re-release, it is an upgrade, so that is something to take into consideration. Also, let's take a look here at Marty McFly, MMS 573. Now, this is one that was highly requested and highly desirable on the secondary market. Doc Brown and the original Marty McFly from Back to the Future was going for extreme, stupid prices. But what do you know? We did get a reissue of this figure, and of course it was an upgrade with not only a better head sculpt and some better tailoring, but we got a brand new addition, that being Einstein. Pretty cool, we get a new accessory. So this is not just a reissue, it is a upgrade, which is something to consider. Now, another one that's a little more puzzling is the MMS 690, that being Venom. This just came out like 6 months ago, and it is getting another re-release, or a re-upgrade, if you want to call it that, with the Let There Be Carnage version. It's the exact same Venom that we got from the original movie, except this one comes with a few different attachments on the arm, as well as a really cool Eddie Brock head sculpt. Now, I think that is fantastic. I can't wait to see how it looks, but you don't have to get that if you do get Carnage. So there are ways around that, so I consider that to be a reissue as well. Let's take a look at a few of the other Marvel re-releases, the most notable ones being Loki and Captain America from Endgame under the 2012 Avengers line. Now, those came out a long time ago, and I'll admit that Captain America is a little bit worse for wear, but I will say that the upgrade that they came out with the brand new Chris Evans head sculpt, much better tailoring and body proportions, looks fantastic. That's a worthy upgrade, as well as the new Loki that hopefully will be coming out soon. We'll be able to accompany it, and hopefully it is an upgrade as well. But those are some of the few versions of Marvel characters that they have reissued. As I said, a majority of them comes from Iron Man or Iron Man 2. They've reissued several of the plastic suits into diecast. Most recently, the most recent announcement was the official announcement of the Diecast Mark 1. I know a lot of people were looking for that. Now, also, the Mark 1 originally, there was a Volume 1, and then they reissued an upgraded, modified version way back when of a Mark version 2 of that Mark 1, if that makes any sense at all. But all that to say is that Iron Man is their money maker, and they have definitely been putting out a lot more Iron Man releases, such as Whiplash. We got a much better Whiplash from Iron Man 2, as well as a few other things coming down the pipe. As I'd said, there's official reissue of the Mark V, which is one of my favorite Iron Man suits, and then they have a modified version of that Mark V, which is called the Suit Up version, which is kind of akin to the Suit Up gantry from the Mark IV. That looks fantastic, which is an interesting, different type of display piece. I'm looking forward to getting that one, but Iron Man has been the main go-to. But now let's also think about a few of the other pieces. There was the D23 in-game Captain America. That one was first released back at the D23, and it was extremely exclusive, very high-end on the secondary market. And that was before the definitive Captain America, the in-game Captain America, came out. So I consider that to be almost a reissue of that figure, or a different version of that figure. All right, let's talk a little bit about Spider-Man. He definitely got a few different reissues himself, the main one being the homemade suit from Homecoming. He got a brand new reissue of that with an upgrade. You got a giant Mysterio drone for the release of Far From Home. And then there was the actual red and blue suit from Spider-Man Homecoming, except this one was called the Movie Promo Edition, which took away the head sculpt and essentially just gave you the figure because it was so high in demand. But still, of all those Marvel releases out there, only 5%, if you include the diecast pieces, have ever been re-released. Now, let's get into the Star Wars re-releases. As I said, there's only three that have ever been reissued, and that is Empire Strikes Back Darth Vader, that is Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett, and Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker. Now, they repackaged the Boba Fett and the Darth Vader under the 40th anniversary packaging, which is fantastic if you missed out on it. I think it looks good. It's really, really cool. But the interesting one is the Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker. Originally, it was the one from Jabba's palace with the brown robe and the different hand. That was a cool figure in general. That was my first Luke that I ever had. But then they came out with a new upgraded deluxe version of that figure. There was the version that was just the indoor poncho, or there was the one that came with the alternate head sculpt, as well as the different type of sand pieces that you could put on his face, as well as the goggles. But that was your Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker. So those are the only three pieces that Star Wars has ever reissued under the Hot Toys banner. So in conclusion, I have to say this, and that is I think that we're putting way too much stock in the idea that Hot Toys is due to owe us anything on reissues. If anything, I think the numbers show that the chances of getting a reissue of something you want is probably pretty darn low, unless it's Batman, because a majority of the re-releases have been Batman figures. So if you're scrolling through the buy-sell trade threads, or if you're looking on eBay, Mercari, or whatever it may be, and you see a figure that you say, that's one of my grail pieces, I've always wanted that one, I would caution you to do a quick double take and make sure that, is this something that actually is going to be reissued? Because I would hate for you to miss out on something that never does come about. Now, obviously there are exceptions to every rule out there, so don't sit there and hold me to it, because anything can happen, because we know Hot Toys is a business. We know that if they want to make money, they certainly will make money. But all I wanted to do is report to you the facts, show you the numbers, and give you the idea that reissues may not be exactly something that they are interested in, especially when it comes to Star Wars, and especially for any other Marvel character that is not named Iron Man. Well, that's going to do it for us here today. I hope you've enjoyed this. Hopefully it was something that was interesting to you. I like diving into stats. I like doing those type of things. It reminds me of playing a little bit of fantasy football, being able to put the different pieces in where I think they need to go. So hopefully you were able to move some pieces around on your chessboard of collecting to make the right play. As I said, if you've not done so already, please subscribe to this channel. We got big plans for 2022, which I can't wait to get to, as well as if you've not checked out my Instagram, I do have some different toy photos on there and different pieces from the collection, so feel free to check that out. But I will be seeing you much sooner than later in our next video.